So I'm thinking more about this film that I want to do. I was thinking it would be cool to have like some sort of occultic stuff and look like you talk, but then I kind of realized that people are going to see it as a fantasy or a fiction if I did that. I think actually thinking about it more now, I think the best thing would be to do is to just start it with maybe me just walking into an interview room, looking just like a normal person, talking to an interviewer. The interviewer would technically be an actor, but part of the film would be for just me to sit and tell the audience the story about how it was. I think I first need to explain the basis of the purpose of the reason why Christianity exists. I would say how the reason what is that I can only come down as a human, and for me to come down as a human, everything needs to be set up for this human to ascend and be a Christ. But the only way a human who knows nothing about, no memory of making the timeline, no memory of being God, the only way for that to happen is for there to be some sort of religion that talks about a Christ, that tells people about the coming, the coming Christ. Of course, though, to get people to believe in the coming Christ, they had to be somewhere in the past. People are going to be more likely to believe in a Christ if they thought he came into a past. So I think the first start of the introduction would be for me to just say, there's the Christianity is very important. It needed to exist. It doesn't need to exist everywhere, but it needs to exist because it predicts, my coming as a human, and it predicts all all the changes that I'm going to make. But yeah, it technically the Bible is full of nonsense. None of the characters are real. And the people who wrote the Bible didn't realize that Abraham wasn't a real person, and I will say all this. I'm going to be in hiding by the time I make this film, but yeah, I'm going to say how I see it, which is that it's just a bunch of fictional stories. And okay, Genesis, people who read Genesis would have been the first book, I believe. I don't know, but um, a lot of the later on stories, if you look at all the stories in the beginning, the early people, a lot of the other books relate to that Genesis and stories in the Genesis. And they talk about these characters, so in the day of Noah this would be, and it's just like, well, technically the day of Noah wasn't the truth. So I think I'd first explain in this documentary, the people who wrote the Bible, they're not my people. They don't know what they were talking about. They didn't know me. They didn't know what they were saying. But through what they are saying, what they believed that they were talking about, you know, I managed to get certain things in that are truth. There's truth and lies about everything. So I would start off the film with me just saying this, explaining that the world was very sexist, and therefore they wouldn't have wanted a female Christ, or wouldn't have wanted to believe that God was a female. So giving them a male Christ or a male God would have been pretty much my only option. But on the other hand, it's also a test. If you create a Christ and create a God that's very different to what the real God and Christ is like, it would be the best way to see people to test the difference between who has the truth and who has the lies. Because the people who have the truth would be the people who could sense that something's not right here. Things aren't adding up. And well, I'll explain in the interview that if you're trying to test people, you can't just give all the answers straight away, because that's not a test. A test is where you give truth and you mix it with lies, and you see what people are willing to believe versus what the truth is. And so this interview is about me explaining what the truth is, and also telling you what the lies are. So I'd start off by that, and then I think I'd explain that the Old Testament is mostly about prophesying the Messiah and God, and the New Testament is about giving a false Christ and writing lots of things about the false Christ, but there being truth, so that a lot of the things that are supposed to be about the false Christ are actually about the real Christ, but the people who wrote it would have believed that it's about a false Christ. So to start off, I'd probably say I'd say it in these words almost. Um, the people who wrote the book didn't know that Christ was going to be a female, so God had to give some sort of delusion or a deception, which is that Jerusalem, Zion, Mount Zion, um, and Israel, Babylon as well. These are all just different names for the real Christ, only they were portrayed as being a city or a group of people, and because the writers themselves believed that that was the case. So I'll first of all talk about that. Those are the ones that are talked about most: Zion, Israel, Babylon, and I'll explain that the writers thought that they were talking about a city, but the Spirit through them was using them to make prophecies about me. Um, only they didn't realize this. So I'll talk about that, and I could even, like, in this film, I'll probably actually show clips of what people were like back then, try and recreate, 500 BC, and just show what the people were like, and how they mistreated women. I think mistreatment of women was common everywhere. I think if you were to tell a male king, God's a woman, I could imagine them being so awful that they would bring one of their female servants, chop their head off in front of themselves, and say, if God is like that, then God is, this is not God. God is, they would have shown women, they would have thought women are weak. And I think people back then were so awful that they would be happy to just kill a woman to make a point that women are weak, even though it's ridiculous, because you could have easily killed killed a male at the same time. But I feel like the level of intelligence was so dumb back then that they would have done anything to prove that God isn't a female. Males were the ones who ruled. They wanted to believe in a male ruler. So God had to lie to the people. So I would make that clear in the film, that the Bible is not truth. It's not real. It's something that was created because it's what people wanted to believe. So that would be the first point that I make. The second point would be to emphasize that Jerusalem, Babylon, and I can show some of the scriptures in the Bible that, okay, they might talk about the town or city, or talk about Jerusalem being a city, but I would also explain that if I would have, if these writers would have talked about Jerusalem being a woman, people would have ripped the books up. They wouldn't have accepted it. So I could even, like, show, this is what would have happened. Like, let's play the scenario. We get this writer. Say we did manage to get a writer to talk about a female Christ. Another guy, a bunch of guys would have come along, ripped them up, probably killed the writer and stuff, and it wouldn't have been accepted. So I'll show scenes of that happening and make it clear, and then I'll say, well, let's start from the beginning, Genesis, and I could show the biblical story of that. Christians believe that God made a thing out of mud, and then I can explain, well, the reason why I had to lie to people about that is because, well, the people were awful, and they wanted to believe that God, made everything. God is all powerful, almighty, all this. They wanted to believe in an all powerful, mighty lie, and I would explain that I gave them the God that they wanted, something that can do everything, control everything, can make humans out of mud or dust or rib bones or whatever. I'd explain that that's not the truth, and then I'll do a contrast. This is the actual truth, and then I could show Darla being born from semi-evolved, ugly monkey creatures, and I'm just like, yeah, how would I get a bunch of morons, idiots that are just horrible and only want to believe in certain things? How could I get them to believe that this was 20,000 years ago, and this was the real Christ? They wouldn't have accepted it. But I'd show the contrast between them, and then we can go through the story of Noah. Now, technically, this is what the story of Noah is, and I could do like a 5-minute sketch of the story of Noah, and then I can explain, well, actually, there's two meanings of it. There was lots of, and I could show the dinosaur age being full of dinosaurs, and just the blood type was very wrong there, because they couldn't speak or do much, and yeah, I sent a comet and I killed them, and um, I don't know what species would have survived to make humans. Probably would have been rats or something as minor as that. But what and then I'll explain that, yeah, we did create humans, so that there was a real flood, but that was the real flood. But yes, there is talking about a future flood, which is the small number of people that are able to accept what the truth, able to see that God is a woman, Christ is a woman, And the flood is a flood of knowledge, saying it's going to sweep over the world, and a lot of people are not going to be able to accept it. And I can show the prophecy of that, and I'll just go through all the things, showing a 5-minute sketch of what Christians believe, and then I'll tell my story through it. Although I'm a bit confused about Judah, um, with Martin, I made everything kind of about Martin, and I pointed to him, but technically Martin is a guy I met a couple of times, and the majority of things about him are probably just things that I fantasized in my head. So I don't know how Martin relates to this, and also the two witnesses. I would have said that he would have been one of them. Um, I could show that there's two witnesses, one that's me and one that's him, but he's still a witness, whether he believes or not. I just don't know enough about his side of things, but I feel like I should probably leave out his side as much as possible, because a lot of it could just be me fantasizing about this, about what I think he's like. But yeah, I think that would be a better way of doing it, rather than turning it into a dramatic size. Make the focus on reality, and me just telling people the truth. And there's loads of, if you type in all these names, there's lots of people that in the Bible bring this up, and they bring up the old characters if they were real. And I need to make it clear that what they thought was real people they were talking about. They weren't talking about real people. There were people who had read this book or seen a copy, got hold of a copy, and had added it into their book as if it's truth. I feel like some people say that the Jewish history is made up, and I think there's truth to that. I really think there's truth to that. I think a lot of the stuff on this book is truth, and a lot of people are going to hate me for this. Um, but at the same time, if the Bible's supposed to be a test, then that's the point of it, to mix truth with lies, and see if people can tell the difference. And if you're someone who's going around claiming Abraham spoke to you, or this person spoke to you, Jesus spoke to you, then how, if Christ is supposed to come and say, I am Jesus, how would you know who was telling the truth and who was not telling the truth? If millions of people all around the world are claiming to have messages from Jesus, and then Jesus comes, how are you going to be able to tell the difference from the truth to the lies? But if, however, Christ comes saying, I'm not Jesus, I don't answer to Jesus, I don't answer to Allah, I don't answer to any of those names, then suddenly it puts into question every religion, every person, and it makes everyone sound like they're just liars, and don't know what they're talking about. And I feel like that is far better way of resolving this divide and this problems and stuff. And today, I don't know, it was an okay day, but there's a lot of people from all faiths. I saw a lot of Sikhs and Muslims, and people from all over the world, just in Birmingham. It's a very multicultural place, and it's weird to think how everyone will respond differently. And yeah, I'm really hating these social workers at all. That black lady that came to do the assessment, you know, I don't know what she's thinking, but there are some people who are very, very hateful to others that have a different belief. And yeah, I'm wondering if that was the reason why she gave me a bad report, because she just is a very horrible person. I hate this world, and I think that paradise is only nice when the people in it are nice. And well, because everyone's ignoring me and no one's helping me, I feel like I just want everyone to live in hell. And then I'm looking around just thinking everyone looks so different, everyone has completely different beliefs. No one's going to agree with me, because they've got their own, they're stuck in their own ways, their own traditions, their own beliefs, their own that, and the world will never come together in the way that it's going. And a complete reset is completely what is needed. But I feel like the people that have the power to do the complete reset are are the people that wouldn't do the complete reset, because they're waiting for like the instruction from, they're waiting for evidence that they are going to be okay if there is a reset. And if the world is how it is and it falls apart, and you don't believe in reincarnation, then so what if the world falls apart? You won't be alive to appreciate it. But if what I'm coming does say, you will be alive, because I've got evidence that reincarnation is real and you're going to come back, and this is your world that you're destroying. There's someone in Jacuzzi yesterday in Tamworth. He was talking about the global elites wanting to reduce the population and stuff, and I'm just like, don't you want that? I mean, don't you think there's too many people here? And then it was like, well, yeah, there are too many people here. It's just everyone hates the idea of population reduction, but at the same time, they also admit that there are too many people here. It's not the land mass. It's the resources, the number of trees. You can just see all these things on the news. Mass amounts of people living in poverty and horrible conditions because there's just not enough building and fundings and skill to build amazing houses. In England, it's very different. The houses in England are amazing, and I'm thinking if half the population go in England, it's who's going to live in all these amazing houses? Because there's some really nice houses. Where did I go the other day? I went somewhere the other day and I was just looking around thinking, that's a nice house, that's a nice house. I think, yeah, I was coming back from Tamworth and there's some really nice houses everywhere. And it's just, um, but yeah, that's not the same in a lot of countries. There's a lot of poverty in places. Um, and so, yeah, if there was a mass population reduction, I'm sure a lot of people, if they could, would move to the richer countries. But you've got to make sure that you're inviting, nice people in. And I don't think people can tell the difference between nice people. That social worker that came to my house and was a complete bitch about me. I don't know why she did that. A part of me wonders if maybe the elites paid her to give a bad result. Maybe the people who can predict the future, have deliberately tried to keep this child away from me, and have paid her to give a bad report, or maybe she just generally can't tell the difference between a person who can look after a child and a person who can't. And I just don't know. I don't know. And thinking about it, it makes me hate people. Seriously, thinking about how much I hate these social workers for not letting me have this child that I really want. I despise them. I want them to turn into animals. Ian would make a nice giraffe, because he could stay awake all day and just do nothing. And yeah, but I don't know. It's really angering me, just the thought of it. And then just, this world can never be nice if people like that. And I can understand why you wouldn't give a child to my mum or my sister. My sister's not very maternal, and my mum's completely mad. But why you wouldn't do it to me? I mean, that just makes no sense, and it just makes me think that there's really horrible people in this world. But then I think I hate this world, and I'm just like, well, you're the ones who are living with these horrible people, not me. I'm just going to. Part of me thinks if I don't get on to Big Brother this year, I should just, I should just stick to myself, try and spend as little of the money as possible, and just hope that I have a brain tumor soon. I've been having slight headaches today, and I just think, I hope it was a brain tumor, then I can just die and get out of this place, and hopefully I don't come back here. But yeah, I hate this world so much, and I really, really hope that there are a group of elites that want to reduce the population, because I can imagine social workers listening to this and thinking, oh, this is the reason why you shouldn't have kids, because you want the population to be halved, and then they just be like, yeah, well, don't you want the population to be halved? And it's like, if they say no, it's probably just because they're afraid that they might be the ones that go. And I don't know, with the world just being as awful as it is, it's just to think that someone is bad just for wanting there to be less people. I just, it's like they can't see the truth, and it's awful.